Moving to a new city for your dream job, that's supposed to be a win, right? But for me, it felt like this. The only sound in my new apartment was the overwhelming silence, and I couldn't help but wonder if I'd made a huge mistake. I had the offer letter in my hand and a map of a city I'd only ever seen in movies. At 28, I was finally starting my dream job. Those first 2 weeks were pure adrenaline, new faces at work, a new apartment, and the thrill of just getting lost in a place where nobody knew my name. I even spent my first real paycheck on a big, comfortable couch, picturing it filled with friends for dinner parties and game nights. But then, the new city glow started to fade. Fast. The excitement wore off, and this quiet, heavy feeling began to set in. My colleagues were nice, but they had their own lives and their own friends. Weekends, which I used to live for, suddenly became these 48-hour black holes of silence. My brand new couch didn't feel cozy, it felt like a deserted island. I'd find myself scrolling through old photos, looking at friends I've known forever, and just feeling this ache. The city outside my window felt like it was a million miles away, and the loneliness started to feel less like a circumstance and more like a personal failure. I'll never forget this one Saturday night, eating takeout from a box and staring at my own reflection in the dark living room window. I realized I had 2 choices. I could let this loneliness swallow me whole, pack up, and go home. Or I could start fighting to build a life right here. The next morning, I chose to fight. My first step sounds small, but it was the hardest. I decided to become a regular somewhere. I found a little coffee shop near my place and went every single morning. At first, I'd just order my coffee, hide in a corner, and leave. But after a while, the baristas started to recognize me. A simple, the usual, felt like a massive win. Just practicing those tiny social interactions, a nod, a smile, started to build my confidence back up. Next, I had to get comfortable with being awkward. I knew I needed to find people who liked what I liked, so I downloaded one of those meetup apps. I found a local hiking group for beginners. For a solid 10 minutes, my thumb just hovered over the join button. All I could think was, what if they're all experts? What if I'm just weird? But the thought of another silent weekend was scarier. That first hike was terrifying. I barely spoke, but on the way down the trail, I started talking to a girl about a movie we'd both seen. It wasn't some life-changing moment, but it was something. It was proof that the only way forward was to lean into the discomfort. Then, I stopped waiting for invitations and decided to send one. It felt completely ridiculous to invite people I barely knew to my apartment, but I did it anyway. I bought a couple of board games and invited 3 people from the hiking group over. I was 100% convinced no one would show up, but they did. We spent the next 4 hours laughing and being way too competitive. And for the first time, my apartment wasn't silent. It felt like a home. It taught me you can't always wait for a seat at the table. Sometimes you have to build your own. That was my journey, but I know I'm not the only one who's gone through this. Getting out of that lonely place happens one small, awkward, intentional step at a time. So, I want to hear from you. What's been your biggest struggle or your biggest win when it comes to making a new city feel like home? Drop it in the comments below. It definitely didn't happen overnight. Building a real community from scratch takes work. There were still quiet nights and plenty of moments where I doubted if I could do it. But little by little, all those small connections started weaving together. The barista at the coffee shop became the person I'd vent to about my week. The hiking group turned into real friendships, with weekend trips and shared dinners. My little board game night, that grew into a regular thing. Looking back, the loneliness was tough, but it was a necessary part of my story. It forced me to figure out what I really needed and to go after it myself. It taught me that connection doesn't just happen to you, it's something you have to build. And a life you build with your own 2 hands is something you can be genuinely proud of.